We need to keep it as simple as it can be, but not simpler than that, unfortunately. So this left needs to be smart, it needs to be radical, it needs to be strategic, and it needs to be brave. Now, speaking of this, and this is totally unprompted, totally random transition, didn't plan this at all, just happened. There was a recent leading dum-dum on YouTube occurrence that may have in fact related to me and this show. So this is totally unprompted. Matt just brought this up right before the show. It's totally unprompted. We came across this piece of dum-dumism.
And if you ever heard people saying, I heard someone say the other day, now, especially with the DACA people, they're being, their lives are being, 6-year-old, brought here as 6-year-old kids, and now that you should have voted for Hillary. Someone actually said that on a news show the other day. So you should have voted because of DACA. How dumb could you be? Pretty dumb, by the way. Still defending voting for Hillary, even though it was Hillary who propped up Donald Trump. She completely rigged the primary to screw over to make sure the only person who could lose to Donald Trump lost to Donald Trump. That's what Hillary... And you still want us to vote for the person who cheated us out of Bernie. You still want to vote for the person who completely got us Donald Trump.
That's all that matters.
You think we got Donald Trump because everybody loved what the fucking Democrats were doing? Because everybody loved how Barack Obama handled shit? Because everybody loved how Bill Clinton handled shit? No, we got Donald Trump because Democrats got in power and fucked everybody over, you dummy. And if we didn't get Trump this time, we were going to get a worse Trump next time. Because your inability to think past one election cycle is why you're a dummy and no one listens to you.
A worse Trump.
It's unbelievable. People still saying that with a straight face. See, because of DACA, this is why we all should have voted for Hillary. Well, you all did fucking vote for Hillary. I don't know if you noticed that. And you could have actually voted for a third party and made a difference with your vote, but you didn't. You voted like a stupid corporate neoliberal. You did the lesser of two evils.
Well, it's been come to my attention that apparently this guy, and I will use his name and his clip, Jimmy Dore, was talking about me. I was on the Young Turks a couple of weeks ago, and in the context of talking about DACA, I said, yeah, this is why you engage in strategic voting, because of the several million DACA recipients who are jeopardized now. It's pretty simple, and as you could see there was a lot of bloviating. He didn't actually answer that question. He says this kind of emotional fixation on Hillary Clinton. But look, apparently I'm a dummy, and I guess I talked like I didn't realize, though, that I said, and this is why I got to vote for Hillary Clinton. I got to check my TYT appearance to see what I was talking like. I know that Jimmy's not an impressionist, but maybe he was trying to get something there. But look, this is Jimmy's Twitter handle, where there's a lot of tweets about, dumb things that Barack Obama did and said. There's a lot of tweets about how horrible Hillary is. There's a lot of tweets about, how garbage a lot of garbage liberals are. Very little to do with, the people that are actually running the country right now, which is sort of interesting. If you're sort of like in the news and politics business and you barely have anything to say about the president of the United States, who's actually a far-right corporatist.
Neoliberalism is one thing, but galloping fascism, maybe spare a thought for it.
Yeah, maybe spare a thought. And actually, in fact, voting for a garbage candidate like Hillary would have actually been great, because then we still would be in a position where neoliberalism was the main issue. Unfortunately, now it's not. But the top of this Twitter, of Jimmy's Twitter feed, he has a tweet, and I think this is a real one. I think before he had a George Orwell tweet, which wasn't actually an Orwell tweet.
Yep.
This is a Chomsky tweet that says, any dictator would admire the uniformity and the obedience of the U.S. media. And I can only imagine that Chomsky was talking about people like me who advocated not voting like a fucking, child during the campaign. I'm sure that Jimmy thinks that Noam is smart. Here's what Noam Chomsky had to say a couple of weeks after the election, that noted corporate shill and sellout.
What's your message to those voters today who refuse to vote for Trump or refuse to vote to stop Trump? What's your message to them now that he's won and he's in the White House?
Same as before. I think they're making a bad mistake. First of all, there are two issues. One is a kind of a moral issue. Do you vote against the greater evil if you don't happen to like the other candidate? The answer to that is yes, if you have any moral understanding. You want to keep the greater evil out. Second is a factual question. How do Trump and Clinton compare? And I think they're very different. I didn't like Clinton at all, but her positions are much better than Trump's on every issue I can think of.
What a fucking corporate sellout. Noam Chomsky's a fucking coward, and this is why people don't subscribe to his YouTube channel. No one listens to him because he's a fucking corporate sellout. Meanwhile, Hillary Clinton, and he just said he loved there, she's the reason that Trump's the fucking president, and you still fucking talk, you dummy. You know, Matt had pointed out that my personal fondness of Jimmy Dore, which, look, he was wrong during the election. And even that point that he makes that, like, oh, the next Trump will be worse. Look, voting is not your fantasy football draft. And Jimmy's whole analysis of the campaign was, you know, in 2020, there'll be a much worse candidate who will beat Hillary, which is possible, but not certain. What we had was certain was what was in front of us, not in your fantasy scenario. And then that if Trump won, there would be a big uprising. And things like, you know, Supreme Court picks could just be filibustered. And any other type of rational assessment of the election was just fear-based thinking. Now, here's the problem, among many. If your lane is really that American society needs a radical transformation, I don't even know what Jimmy truly wants. I know that we need to end capitalism. I know that we need to transition to economic democracy. I know that getting there is going to take all sorts of interventions, activism, politics, and things that don't involve presidential campaigns. Truly radical actions across the board and forms of solidarity. And then I also know that what you do is you vote if there's an opportunity, as in Bernie Sanders' case, to actually advance things. That's the best case scenario. And then besides that, you vote to stop the bleeding. And you vote because actually, in reality, we know that in most cases, left resistance is built in places not of accelerationist horror, but in really bad conditions where there's a little bit of opening to push back. That's actually the context of the Russian Revolution, as an example. That's how it happened, because there were compromises. There was some weakenings in the system. Revolutionaries were able to seize on that. So intentionally saying, I'm going to take a situation, and by the way, this is not somebody who is saying in the middle of the country who's like, look, I've been fucked over by the political establishment. I've been abused by players on both sides, and I'm done. I'm through with it. I'm not voting. Or maybe I've been sucked in by the Trump scam, or maybe I'm doing a protest vote. I have no judgment for those people. No comment. But if you're a political commentator sitting on your ass in LA who doesn't do basic research and is playing with people's lives because of a fantasy scenario in your head about what could be, that has been debunked through every step of this administration. Okay, here's what's happened. No, there wasn't a filibuster on the Supreme Court. Gorsuch is there. There's cases coming down that will radically deepen the war on organized labor in this country, on public sector unions. You think there's going to be any type of left without Labor Party power in this country? Without labor power? There's no left in the world that didn't have labor power. Now, did Democrats sell out labor and take corporate contributions? Absolutely. So your answer to a revanchist far right that's doing even more than any previous administration on labor is to go back into history and bitch about Democrats fucking up on that issue. What we on the actual left who care about actually achieving things are doing is fighting all of these fronts simultaneously. But actually, in fact, focusing now on the main threat. I said if you were in a swing state, vote for Hillary because I wanted to keep the main threat and the main problem be those fucking neoliberals and corporatists that we do have to defeat, not galloping fascists. But you know what? It's a good business model. Outrage is a good business model, and it's easy click content. Why figure out a Supreme Court ruling when you can endlessly bitch about an MSNBC segment? Why do strategy that points out that, of course, Obama had an obscene record on deportations and Trump is worse, when you can do, I don't know, 10 segments on how when Kamala Harris supported single payer, but she didn't say it with the right amount of enthusiasm? This is middle school gossip and your fantasy life. It's not politics. I was on Jimmy's show once, and he was doing this riff before the election. And I went with him on a lot of this shit. Yeah, Hillary was terrible. Hillary was terrible on war. She was terrible on corporations. She had a terrible record on everything from race to welfare. We know this. And then I would just drop these seeds. Well, difference, Iran deal. There's a difference. DACA. And I remember one time he goes, yeah, you're right on the DACA. That's true. Donald Trump did slightly increase his margin with Hispanic voters. I think a lot of that has to do with many Hispanic voters being American citizens who were also brought in by his economic scam. I don't think, as Jimmy speculated later in that video, that people who are enraged at Obama's deportations voted to punish Obama by voting for the most overtly xenophobic presidential candidate in modern history. Just a thought. Dude, if you want to do politics, you got to fucking understand the issues. It's not all just emotions and fantasy life. Or if you want to do emotions and fantasy life, then own it and just do critique, and that's great. But don't call people who actually care about the process and bother to do some fucking research dummies because they look at things a little bit structurally. It's an easy hustle. It's an easy market. It's an easy game. But it's not contributing to anything. It's not going to help us win. And to me, it seems like, if anything, at this point, this is helping Trump. If we have to fight neoliberals, we have to fight Trump, we have to fight establishment Democrats, we have to deal with the corporate hegemony, we have to deal with ideological conformity of a global elite, do we really need to spend our time on YouTube just giving people dumb emotional releases? Or actually help them think about how they actually get power? And I know that was spoken like a true fucking corporate sellout. Get the fuck out of here, man. Do some research. Get serious. And don't be a coward. You didn't mention my name. You haven't had Sam on your show. Engage.